I'm Mike from Music Radio Creative, and in this video, I want to show you Audacity podcast settings for an optimum sounding show. Okay, here we are in Audacity. Got two tracks. We've got the host on track 1, we've got the guest on track 2. It's all been neatly edited, tidied up using some of the other tips and tutorials on my channel. And now we have like blank spaces in each area where there's no speech. And so this is a really clean show. It's ready to save with optimum Audacity podcast settings. Now, the first thing we need to do, and this is really important for podcasting, is hit loudness standards. Thankfully, Audacity makes it easy for us to do this. All I need to do is hit Command or Control on a PC and A to select all the tracks in my Audacity project. Then I'll go into the Effect menu and I'll look for volume and compression and loudness normalization. Now, there's a couple here. Normalize takes the maximum peak of the audio and then increases that just by the amount you say. But loudness normalization is different. It takes into account the whole overall sound of the audio you've highlighted and normalizes it to be the same level as everything else. So if I've got all these different clips here, it will normalize them so that the speech is exactly the same in levels. So we never have anything that's too loud or too quiet. And also, when the next podcast plays, it'll sound roughly the same loudness as ours. So loudness normalization is an important process. And for podcasts, it should be -16 here in the LUFS box. And you need to make sure that perceived loudness is selected as your normalized process and not RMS, okay? Perceived loudness is what we need. Now, I suggest unticking normalized stereo channels independently, especially as most podcasts are mono and speech-based anyway. And you should also have treat mono as dual mono ticked. It is recommended. Click apply. Okay, look at that. That's fantastic. We are now at the correct loudness standard of -16 LUFS. We can be sure that our podcast audio is now hitting the correct standards, and it's going to be great for upload to our podcast host. The final thing to go through now is to look at file formats for podcasts. And when we save the final mixed project out, we need to go into the file menu, obviously, but we don't save the project because this just saves the Audacity project. That's the metadata of where all our edits are. It doesn't actually save it as an audio file. In order to do that, you need to go to Export Audio, and then we select Export to Computer because we want to save the file onto our computer so we can upload it in a second to our podcast host, and we'll call this one just Podcast. Now, we could call it podcast001.mp3. If you found what you've seen handy so far, throw a like and subscribe to my channel for more tutorials just like this one. And of course, yes, we want to make sure MP3 is selected. This is the most common format for a podcast. We don't want to be saving as WAV, for instance, or anything like a FLAC that is lossless and uncompressed and very large in size. MP3 is recommended. Now, if your podcast is speech only, you'll want to select channels as mono. And that's generally recommended. It keeps file sizes down. However, if you're including music, jingles, and whatever like that, and you need that stereo sound, by all means, go for it, hit stereo, and that's quite cool. Let's start with stereo because that's higher quality. Sample rate for podcasts should always be 44/100 Hz. So make sure it's selected as that and not 48 as sometimes may be selected. This is generally better for video, but podcasting 44/100. Now, bitrate mode should always be constant. Never select anything else. And for a stereo, audio, or music-based podcast, you'll want 128 kbps, okay? Export range, of course, is the entire project. And if you're happy with that, you can go ahead and click Export to save the file. But if we're looking at voice-only speech podcasts, we can save further space and make our file smaller by selecting mono. Again, keeping sample rate at 44/100 Hz, a constant bitrate mode, but now we can afford to slide down to 96 kbps. You won't notice much difference in terms of quality, but it'll save you a bit of space. And in fact, some podcasters will even go down to 64 kbps. This again is pretty acceptable, especially if you want a small file size. If you want to start degrading an audio, 56 is okay. And if you want to sound like
the BBC World Service on shortwave radio.
Go to 32 kbps. It will be very, very tiny file, but it's not going to sound that great. When you're happy with everything, you've got the settings dialed in that you want, export, and boom, it's going to export the audio and save it to your disk ready for upload. Congratulations, you've created your first podcast, you've hit loudness standards, and you've selected the right file format. Now you can upload and reach the world with your show. If you learned something new, throw a like and subscribe because I'm doing more tutorials like this. Share this with another podcaster who would enjoy it. And let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. I'm down there helping out if you need it.